Section 22 of the Book of the 1000 Nights and a Night, Volume 13, translated by Richard Francis Burton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Thomas Copeland. Part 3 of The Two Sisters Who Envied Their Cadette. The end of the 681st night. Then said she, I have heard, O auspicious king, that all the company rode on, and as each one arrived at the road which led him to his natal land, he took leave of the Lady Perizada and went his way, until all were gone, and the princess and her brothers were the only left. At last they reached their journey's end safe and sound, and on entering their mansion, Perizada hung the cage inside the garden hard by the belvedere, and no sooner did the speaking bird begin to sing than flights of ring-doves and bulbuls and nightingales and skylarks and parrots and other songsters came flocking around him from afar and anear. Likewise she set the twig, which she had taken from the singing tree, in a choice parterre also hard by the belvedere, and forthright it took root, and put forth boughs and buds, and grew goodly in growth, till it became a trunk as large as that from which she had plucked the twig, whilst from its leafage went forth bewitching sounds, rivaling the music of the parent tree. She lastly bid them carve her a basin of pure white marble, and set it in the centre of the pleasure grounds. Then she poured therein the golden water, and forthright it filled the bowl, and shot upwards like a spouting fountain some 20 feet in height. Moreover, the gerbs and jets fell back whence they came, and not one drop was lost, whereby the working of the waters was unbroken and ever similar. Now but a few days passed ere the report of these three wonders was bruited abroad, and flocked the folk daily from the city to solace themselves with the sight, and the gates stood always open wide, and all who came had entrance to the house and gardens, and free leave to walk about at will, and see these rarities, which affected them with admiration and delight. Then also, as soon as both the princes had recovered from the toils of travel, they began to go a-hunting as heretofore. And it chanced one day they rode forth several miles from home, and were both busied in the chase, when the Shah of Iranland came by decree of destiny to the same place for the same purpose. The princes, seeing a band of knights and huntsmen drawing near, were fain to ride home, and to avoid such meeting. So they left the hunting grounds, and turned them homewards. But as fate and lot would have it, they hit upon the very road whereby King Khusrau Shah was coming, and so narrow was the path that they could not avoid the horsemen by wheeling round and wending another way. So they drew rein perforce, and dismounting they salaamed, and did obeisance to the Shah, and stood between his hands with heads held low. The sovereign, seeing the horses' fine trappings and the prince's costly garments, thought that the two youths were in the suite of his viziers and his ministers of state, and much wished to look upon their faces. He therefore bade them raise their heads and stand upright in the presence, and they obeyed his bidding with modest mien and downcast eyes. He was charmed to behold their comeliness of favour, and their graceful forms, and the noble air, and their courtly mien. And after gazing at them for some time, in not a little wonder and admiration, he asked them who they were, and what might be their names, and where they abode. Hereto Prince Bachman made reply, O asylum of the universe, we are the sons of one whose life was spent in serving the Shah, the intendant of the royal gardens and pleasances. As his days drew to a close, he builded him a home without the town for us to dwell in, till we should grow to man's estate, and become fit to do thy highness suit and service, and carry out thy royal commands. The Shah furthermore asked them, How is it that ye go a-hunting? This is a special sport of kings, and is not meant for the general of his subjects and dependents. Prince Bachman rejoined, O refuge of the world, we are yet young in years, and being brought up at home, we know little of courtly customs. But as we look to bear arms in the armies of the Shah, we fain would train our bodies to toil and moil. This answer was honoured by the royal approof, and the king rejoined, The Shah would see how ye deal with noble game. So choose ye whatever quarry ye will, and bring it down in the presence. The princes hereat remounted their horses and joined the sovereign. And when they reached the thickmost of the forest, Prince Bachman started a tiger, and Prince Parvez rode after a bear, and the twain used their spears with such skill and goodwill that each killed his quarry and laid it at the Shah's feet. Then, entering the wood again, Prince Bachman slew a bear, and Prince Parvez a tiger, and did as before. But when they would have ridden off the third time, the king forbade them, saying, "What, would ye strip the royal preserve of all the game? This be enough, and more than enough, that Shah wished only to put your valour to the proof, and having seen it with his own eyes, he is fully satisfied. Come now with us, and stand before us as we sit at meat." Prince Bachman made reply, "We are not worthy of the high honour and dignity wherewith thou favourest us, thy humble servants. We dutifully and humbly petition thy highness to hold us excused for this day. But if the asylum of the universe deign appoint some other time, thy slaves will right gladly execute thy auspicious orders." And as the morn began to dawn, Shahrazad held her peace, till the end of the 682nd night. Then said she, "I have heard, O auspicious king, that Khusrau Shah, astonished at their refusal, asked the cause thereof, when Prince Bachman answered, 'May I be thy sacrifice, O King of Kings? We have at home an only sister, and all three are bound together with bonds of the fondest affection. So we brothers go not anywhere without consulting her, nor doth she aught save according to our counsel.' The king was pleased to see such fraternal love and union, and presently quoth he, 'By the head of the Shah, he freely giveth you leave to go to-day. Consult your sister, and meet the shadow of Allah to-morrow at this hunting ground, and tell him what she saith, and if she be content to let you twain wait upon the Shah at meat.' So the princes farewelled and prayed for him, then rode back home. But they both forgot to tell their sister how they had fallen in with the king, and of all that passed between them they remembered not one word. Next day again they went hunting, and on returning from the chase the Shah inquired of them, 'Have ye consulted with your sister, if you may serve the king? And what saith she thereto? Have ye obtained permission from her?' On hearing these words, the princes waxed aghast with fear. The colour of their faces changed, and each began to look into the other's eyes. Then Bachman said, 'Pardon, O refuge of the world, this our transgression. We both forgot the command, and remembered not to tell our sister.' Replied the king, 'It mattereth not. Ask her to-day, and bring me word to-morrow.' But it so happened that on that day also they forgot the message. Yet the king was not annoyed at their shortness of memory, but taking from his pocket 3 little balls of gold, and tying them in a kerchief of silk, he handed them to Prince Bachman, saying, 'Put these balls in thy waist shawl, so shalt thou not forget to ask thy sister. And if perchance the matter escape thy memory, when thou shalt go to bed and take off thy girdle, haply the sound of them falling to the ground will remind thee of thy promise.' Despite this strict injunction of the shadow of Allah, the princes on that day also clean forgot the order and the promise they had made to the king. When, however, night came on, and Prince Bachman went to his bedchamber for sleep, he loosed his girdle, and down fell the golden balls, and at the sound the message of the Shah flashed across his thought. So he and his brother Parvez at once hastened to Perizada's bower, where she was about retiring to rest, and with many excuses for troubling her at so unseasonable an hour, reported to her all that happened. She lamented their thoughtlessness, which for 3 successive days had caused them to forget the royal behest, and ended with saying, 'Fortune hath favoured you, O my brothers, and brought you suddenly to the notice of the asylum of the universe, a chance which often hath led to the height of good. It grieveth me sore that on your over-regard for our fraternal love and union ye did not take service with the king when he deigned command you. Moreover, ye have far greater cause for regret and repentance than I, in that ye failed to plead a sufficient excuse, and that which ye offered must have sounded rude and churlish. A right dangerous thing it is to thwart kingly wishes. In his extreme condescension the Shah commandeth you to take service with him, and ye, in rebelling against his exalted orders, have done foolishly, and ye have caused me much trouble of mind. Howbeit I will sue for counsel for my slave the speaking-bird, and see what he may say. For when I have ever any hard and weighty question to decide, I fail not to ask his advice." Hereupon the princess set the cage by her side, and after telling her slave all that her brothers have made known to her, asked admonition of him regarding what they should do. The speaking-bird made answer, "It behoveth the princes to gratify the Shah in all things he requireth of them. Moreover, let them make ready a feast for the king, and humbly pray them to visit this house, and thereby testify to him loyalty and devotion to his royal person." Then said the princess, "O bird, my brothers are most dear to me, nor would I suffer them leave my sight for one moment, if it were possible. And Allah forfend that this daring on their part do injury to our love and affection." Said the speaking-bird, "I have counselled thee for the best, and have offered thee the right rede. Nor do thou fear aught in following it, for naught save good shall come therefrom." "But," quoth the princess, "and the shadow of Allah honour us by crossing the threshold of this house, needs must I present myself before him with face unveiled?" "By all means," quoth the speaking-bird, "this will not harm thee. Nay, rather, 'twill be to thine advantage." And as the morn began to dawn, Shahrazad held her peace till the end of the 683rd night. Then said she, "I have heard, O auspicious king, that early next day the two princes Bahman and Parvez rode as aforetime to the hunting ground, and met Khusrau Shah, who asked them, saying, What answer bring ye from your sister? Hereupon the elder brother, advancing, said, O shadow of Allah, verily we are thy slaves, and whatever thou deign bid, that we are ready to obey. These less than the least have referred the matter to their sister, and have obtained her consent. Nay, more, she blamed and chided them for that they did not hurry to carry out the commands of the refuge of the world, the moment they were delivered. Therefore, being sore displeased at us, she desireth us, on her behalf, to plead forgiveness with the Shah for this offence by us offered. Replied the king, No crime have ye committed to call forth the royal displeasure. Nay, more, it delighteth the shadow of Allah exceedingly to see the love ye twain bear towards your sister. Hearing such words of condescension and kindliness from the Shah, the princes held their peace and hung their heads for shame groundwards. And the king, who that day was not keen according to his custom after the chase, whenever he saw the brothers hold aloof, called them to his presence and heartened their hearts with words of favour. And presently, when aweary of sport, he turned the head of his steed palaceward, and deigned order the princes to ride by his side. The viziers and counsellors and courtiers one and all fumed with envy and jealousy to see two unknowns entreated with such especial favour. And as they rode at the head of the suite down the market street, all eyes were turned upon the youths, and men asked one another, Who be the two who ride beside the Shah? Belong they to this city, or come they from some foreign land? And the folk praised and blessed them, saying, Allah send our King of Kings two princes, as godly and gallant as are these twain who ride beside him. If our hapless queen, who languisheth in durance, had brought forth sons, by Allah's favour they would now be of the same age as these young lords. But as soon as the cavalcade reached the palace, the king alighted from his horse and led the princes to his private chamber, a splendid retreat, magnificently furnished, wherein a table had been spread with sumptuous meats and rarest cates. And, having seated himself thereat, he motioned them to do likewise. Hereupon the brothers, making low obeisance, also took their seats, and ate in well-bred silence with respectful mien. Then the Shah, desiring to warm them into talk, and thereby to test their wit and wisdom, addressed them on themes galore, and asked of them many questions. And inasmuch as they had been taught well, and trained in every art and science, they answered with propriety and perfect ease. The Shah, struck with admiration, bitterly regretted that Almighty Allah had not vouchsafed to him sons so handsome in semblance, and so apt and so learned as these twain. And, for the pleasure of listening to them, he lingered at meat longer than he was wont to do. And when he rose from table and retired with them to his private apartment, he still sat long while talking with them, and at last, in his admiration, he exclaimed, "Never until this day have I set eyes on youths so well brought up, and so comely, and so capable as are these, and methinks 'twere hard to find their equals anywhere. In fine," quoth he, "the time waxes late, so now let us cheer our hearts with music." And forthright the royal band of minstrels and musicians began to sing and perform upon instruments of mirth and merriment, whilst dancing girls and boys displayed their skill, and mimes and mummers played their parts. The princes enjoyed the spectacle with extreme joy, and the last hours of the afternoon passed in royal revelry and regale. But when the sun had set and evening came on, the youths craved dismissal from the Shah with many expressions of gratitude for the exalted favours he had deigned bestow on them. And ere they fared forth, the King of Kings bespake them, saying, "Come ye again on the morrow to our hunting ground, as heretofore, and thence return to the palace. By the beard of the Shah, he fain would have you always with him, and solace him with your companionship and converse." Prince Bahman, prostrating himself before the presence, answered, "'Tis the very end and aim of all our wishes, O shadow of Allah upon earth, that on the morrow, when thou shalt come from the chase and pass by our poor house, thou graciously deign enter and rest in it awhile, thereby conferring the highmost of honours upon ourselves and upon our sister. Albeit the place is not worthy of the Shah and Shah's exalted presence, yet at times do mighty kings condescend to visit the huts of their slaves." The king, ever more and more enchanted with their comeliness and pleasant speech, vouchsafed a most gracious answer, saying, "The dwelling place of youths in your estate and degree will certainly be goodly and right worthy of you, and the Shah willingly consenteth for the morrow to become the guest of you twain and of your sister, whom, albeit he have not yet seen, he is assured to find perfect in all gifts of body and mind. Do ye twain, therefore, about early dawntide expect the Shah at the usual trysting place." The princes then craved leave to wend their ways, and going home said to their sister, "O Parizade, the Shah hath decreed that tomorrow he will come to our house and rest here awhile after the hunt." Said she, "And so it be, needs must we see to it that all be made ready for a royal banquet, and we may not be put to shame when the shadow of Allah shall deign shade us. There is no help but that in this matter I ask of my slave the speaking bird what counsel he would give, and that I prepare according thereto such meats as are meet for him, and are pleasing to the royal palate." And as the morn began to dawn, Shahrazad held her peace till the end of the 684th night. Then said she, "I have heard, O auspicious king, that the princes both approved of her plan, and went to seek repose." Whereupon Parizade sent for the cage, and setting it before her, said, "O bird, the Shah hath made a promise, and hath decreed that he will deign honour this our house on the morrow. Wherefore we must needs make ready for our liege lord the best of banquets, and I bid thee say me what dishes should the kitcheners cook for him." The speaking bird replied, "O my lady, thou hast the most skilful of cooks and confectioners. Do thou bid them dress for thee the choicest dainties, but above all others see thou with thine own eyes that they set before the Shah a dish of new green cucumbers stuffed with pearls." Quoth the princess in utter wonderment, "Never until this time heard I of such a dainty. How? Cucumbers with a filling of pearls? And what will the king, who cometh to eat bread and not to gaze on stones, say to such meat? Furthermore, I have not in my possession pearls enough to serve for even a single cucumber." Replied the speaking bird, "This were an easy matter. Do thou dread naught, but only act as I shall advise thee. I seek not aught save thy welfare, and would on no wise counsel thee to thy disadvantage. As for the pearls, thou shalt collect them on this wise. Go thou tomorrow betimes to the pleasure gardens, and bid a hole be dug at the foot of the first tree in the avenue by thy right hand, and there shalt thou find of pearls as large a store as thou shalt require." So after dawn on the next day, Princess Parizade bade a gardener lad accompany her, and fared to the site within the pleasure gardens whereof the speaking bird had told her. Here the boy dug a hole both deep and wide, when suddenly his spade struck upon somewhat hard, and he removed with his hands the earth, and discovered to view a golden casket, well nigh 1 foot square. Hereupon the young gardener showed it to the princess, who explained, "I brought thee with me for this very reason. Take heed, and see that no harm come to it, but dig it out, and bring it to me with all care." When the lad did her bidding, she opened it forthright, and found it filled with pearls and unions fresh from the sea, round as rings, and all of one and the same size, perfectly fitted for the purpose which the speaking bird had proposed. Parizade rejoiced with extreme joy at the sight, and taking up the box, walked back with it to the house. And the princes, who had seen their sister faring forth betimes with the gardener lad, and had wondered why she went to the park thus early, unaccording to her wonted custom, catching sight of her from the casement, quickly donned their walking dresses, and came to meet her. And as the two brothers walked forwards, they saw the princess approaching them with somewhat unusual under her arm, which, when they met, proved to be a golden casket, whereof they knew not. Quoth they, "O, our sister, at early light we espied thee going to the pleasure grounds with the gardener lad empty-handed, but now thou bringest back this golden casket. So disclose to us where and how thou hast found it, and haply there may be some hoard close hidden in the parterre." Parizade replied, "Sooth ye say, O my brothers. I took this lad with me, and made him dig under a certain tree, where we came upon this box of pearls, at the sight whereof methinks your hearts will be delighted." The princess straightway opened the box, and her brothers, sighting the pearls and unions, were amazed with extreme amazement, and rejoiced greatly to see them. Quoth the princess, "Come now, ye twain, with me, for that I have in hand a weighty matter." And quoth Prince Bahman, "What is there to do? I pray thee tell us without delay, for never yet hast thou kept aught of thy life from us." She made reply, "O my brothers, I have naught to hide from you, nor think ye any ill of me, for I am now about to tell you all the tale." Then she made known to them what advice the speaking bird had given to her, and they, conning the matter over in their minds, marvelled much why her slave had bidden them set a dish of green cucumbers stuffed with pearls before the Shah, nor could they devise any reason for it. Presently the princess resumed, "The speaking bird indeed is wise and ware, so methinks this counsel must be for our advantage, and at any rate it cannot be without some object and purpose. It therefore behoveth us to do even as he hath commanded." Hereupon the princess went to her own chamber, and summoning the head cook, said to him, "This day the Shah, the shadow of Allah upon earth, will condescend here to eat the noon meal. So do thou take heed that the meats be of choicest flavour, and fittest to set before the asylum of the world. But of all the dishes there is one thou alone must bake, and let not another have a hand therein. This shall be of the freshest green cucumbers, with a stuffing of unions and pearls." And as the morn began to dawn, Shahrazad held her peace till the end of the 685th night. Then said she, "I have heard, O auspicious king, that the head cook listened to this order of the princess with wonderment, and said in himself, 'Who ever heard of such a dish, or dreamed of ordering such a one?' The lady, seeing his astonishment betrayed in his semblance without the science of thought-reading, said to him, 'It seemeth from thy countenance that thou deemest me daft of wit, to give thee such order. I know that no one ever tasted a dish of the kind, but what is that to thee? Do thou e'en as thou art bidden. Thou seest this box brimful on pearls, so take of them as many as thou needest for the dish, and what remaineth over leave in the box.' The kitchener, who could answer nothing in his confusion and amazement, chose as many precious stones as he required, and presently fared away to superintend the meats being cooked, and made ready for the feast. Meanwhile the princess went over the house and grounds, and gave directions to the slaves about the ordinance thereof, lending especial attention to the carpets and divans, the lamps, and all other furniture. Next day, at break of dawn, Princes Bachman and Parvez rode forth in rich attire to the appointed place where they first met the Shah, who was also punctual to his promise, and vouchsafed to join them in the hunt. Now when the sun had risen high and its rays waxed hot, the king gave up the chase, and set forth with the princes to their house. And as they drew nigh thereto, the Cadette pushed forwards and sent word to the princess that the asylum of the world was coming in all good omen. Accordingly she hastened to receive him, and stood waiting his arrival at the inner entrance. And after, when the king rode up to the gate, and dismounting within the court, stepped over the threshold of the house door, she fell down at his feet and did worship. Hereat her brothers said, O asylum of the world, this is our sister of whom we spake. And the Shah, with gracious kindness and condescension, raised her by the hand, and when he saw her face, he marvelled much at its wondrous comeliness and loveliness. He thought in himself, How like she is to her brothers in favour and form, and I trow there be none of all my lieges in city or country who can compare with them for beauty and noble bearing. This country house also exceedeth all that I have ever seen in splendour and grandeur. The princess then led the Shah through the house, and showed him all the magnificence thereof, while he rejoiced with extreme joy at everything that met his sight. So when King Khusrau had considered whatso was in the mansion, he said to the princess, This home of thine is far grander than any palace owned by the Shah, who would now stroll about the pleasure garden, never doubting but that it will be delightsome as the house. Hereat the princess threw wide open the door whence the grounds could be seen, and at once the king beheld before, and above all other things, the fountain, which cast up incessantly in gerbes and jets water clear as crystal, withal golden of hue. Seeing such prodigy, he cried, This is indeed a glorious gusher. Never before saw I one so admirable. But say me, where is its source, and by what means doth it shoot up in spurts so high? Whence cometh this constant supply, and in what fashion was it formed? The Shah would fain see it near hand. O King of kings and Lord of the lands, quoth the princess, be pleased to do whatso thou desirest. Thereupon they went up to the fountain, and the Shah stood gazing upon it with delight, when, behold, he heard a concert of sugar-sweet voices choiring with the harmony and melody of wit-ravishing music. So he turned him around, and gazed about him to discover the singers. But no one was in sight, and albeit he looketh both hard and near, all was in vain. He heard the voices, but he could descry no songster. At length, completely baffled, he exclaimed, Whence come these most musical of sounds? And rise they from the bowels of earth, or are they floating in the depths of air? They fill the heart with rapture, but strangely surprise the senses, to see that no one singer is in sight. Replied the princess with a smile, O Lord of lords, there are no minstrels here, and the strains which strike the Shah's ear come from yonder tree. Deign walk on, I pray thee, and examine it well. So he advanced thereto, ever more and more enchanted with the music, and he gazed now at the golden water, and now at the singing tree, till lost in wonderment and amazement. Then, O Allah, said he to himself, is this nature-made or magical? For in very deed the place is full of mystery. Presently, turning to the princess, quoth he, O my lady, prithee, whence came ye by this wondrous tree, which hath been planted in the middlemost of this garden? Did any one bring it from some far distant land as a rare gift? And by what name is it known? Quoth Parizade in reply, O King of kings, this marvel, hight singing tree, groweth not in our country. 'Twere long to recount whence and by what means I obtained it, and suffice it for the present to say that the tree, together with the golden water and the speaking bird, were all found by me at one and the same time. Deign now accompany thy slave, and look upon this third rarity. And when the Shah shall have rested and recovered from the toils and travails of hunting, the tale of these three strange things shall be told to the asylum of the world in fullest detail. Hereto the king replied, All the Shah's fatigue hath gone for gazing upon these wonders, and now to visit the speaking bird. And as the morning began to dawn, Shahrazad held her peace till the end of the 686th night. Then said she, I have heard, O auspicious king, that the princess took the king, and when she had shown to him the speaking bird, they returned to the garden, where he never ceased considering the fountain with extreme surprise, and presently exclaims, How is this? No spring whence cometh all this water meeteth the Shah's eye, and no channel, nor is there any reservoir large enough to contain it. She replied, Thou speakest sooth, O King of Kings. This jetting fount hath no source, and it springeth from a small marble basin, which I filled from a single flagon of the golden water. And by the might of Allah Almighty it increased and waxed copious until it shot up in this huge gerb which the Shah seeth. Furthermore, it ever playeth day and night, and, marvellous to relate, the water falling back from that height into the basin minisheth not in quantity, nor is aught of it spilt or wasted. Hereat the king, filled with wonder and astonishment, bade go back to the speaking bird, whereupon the princess led him to the belvedere, whence he looked out upon thousands of all manner fowls carolling in the trees, and filling air with their hymns and praises of the Creator. So he asked his guide, O my lady, whence come these countless songsters which haunt yonder tree, and make the welkin resound with their melodious notes? Yet they affect none other of the trees. Quoth Parizade, O King of Kings, they are all attracted by the speaking bird, and flock hither to accompany his song. And for that his cage hangeth to the window of this belvedere, they prefer only the nearest of the trees, and here he may be heard singing sweeter notes than any of the others, nay, in plaint more musical than that of any nightingale. And as the Shah drew nigh the cage, and gave ear to the bird's singing, the princess called to her captive, saying, Ho, my slave the bird, dost thou not perceive the asylum of the universe is here, that thou payest him not due homage and worship? Hearing these words, the speaking bird forthright ceased his shrilling, and at the same moment all the other songsters sat in deepest silence, for they were loyal to their liege lord, nor durst any one utter a note when he held his peace. The speaking bird then spake in human voice, saying, O great king, may Almighty Allah by his might and majesty accord thee health and happiness. So the Shah returned the salutation, and the slave of Princess Parizade ceased not to shower blessings upon his head. Meanwhile the tables were spread after sumptuous fashion, and the choicest meats were set before the company, which was seated in due order and degree, the Shah placing himself hard by the speaking bird, and close to the casement where the cage was hung. Then, the dish of green cucumbers having been set before him, he put forth his hand to help himself, but drew it back in wonderment when he saw that the cucumbers, ranged in order upon the plate, were stuffed with pearls, which appeared at either end. He asked the princess and her brothers, What is this dish? It cannot be meant for food. Then wherefore is it placed before the Shah? Explain to me, I command you, what this thing meaneth. They could not give an answer, unknowing what reply to make. And as all held their peace, the speaking bird answered for them, saying, O king of the age and the time, dost thou deem it strange to see a dish of cucumbers stuffed with pearls? How much stranger then it is that thou wast not astonished to hear that the queen thy consort had, contrary to the laws of Allah's ordinance, given birth to such animals as dog and cat and muskrat. This should have caused thee far more wonder, for who hath ever heard of woman bearing such as these? Hereat the Shah made answer to the speaking bird, All that thou sayest is right indeed, and I know that such things are not after the law of Almighty Allah. But I believe the reports of the midwives, the wise women who were with the queen such time she was brought to bed, for they were not strangers, but her own sisters, born of the same parents as herself. How then could I do otherwise than trust their words? Quoth the speaking bird, O King of Kings, indeed the truth of the matter is not hidden from me. Albeit they be the sisters of thy queen, Yet, seeing the royal favours and affection towards their Cadette, they were consumed with anger and hatred and despite by reason of their envy and jealousy. So they devised evil devices against her, and their deceits at last succeeded in diverting thy thoughts from her, and in hiding her virtues from thy sight. Now are their malice and treason made manifest to thee, and if thou require further proof, do thou summon them and question them of the case. They cannot hide it from thee, and will be reduced to confess and crave thy pardon. And as the morn began to dawn, Shahrazad held her peace till the end of the 687th night. Then said she, I have heard, O auspicious king, that the speaking bird also said to Khusrau Shah, These two royal brothers, so comely and stalwart, and this lovely princess their sister, are thine own lawful children, to whom the queen thy consort gave birth. The midwives, thy sisters-in-law, by reason of the blackness of their hearts and faces, bore them away as soon as they were born. Indeed, every time a child was given to thee, they wrapped it in a bit of blanket, and putting it in a basket, committed it to the stream, which floweth by the palace, to the intent that it might die an obscure death. But it so fortuned that the intendant of thy royal gardens espied these baskets one and all, as they floated past his grounds, and took charge of the infants he found therein. He then caused them to be nursed and reared with all care, and whilst they were growing up to man's estate, he looked to their being taught every art and science. And whilst his life endured, he dealt with them, and brought them up in love and tenderness, as though they had been his very own. And now, O Khusrau Shah, wake from thy sleep of ignorance and heedlessness, and know that these two princes, Bahman and Parvez, and the Princess Perizada, their sister, are thine own issue, and thy rightful heirs. When the king heard these words, and was assured of the purport being true, and understood the evil doing of those Satans, his sisters-in-law, he said, O bird, I am indeed persuaded of thy soothfastness. For when I first saw these youths at the hunting ground, my bowels yearned with affection towards them, and my heart felt constrained to love them, as though they had been my own seed. Both they and their sister have drawn my affections to them as a magnet draweth iron. And the voice of blood crieth to me, and compelleth me to confess the tie, and to acknowledge that they are my true children, born in the womb of my queen, whose direful destiny I have been the means of carrying out. Then turning to the princes and their sister, he said with tearful eyes and broken voice, Ye are my children, and henceforth do ye regard me as your father. At this they ran to him with rare delight, and falling on his neck embraced him. Then they all sat down to meat, and when they had finished eating, Khusrau Shah said to them, O my children, I must now leave you, but, inshallah, Allah willing, I will come again tomorrow, and bring with me the queen, your mother. So saying, he farewelled them fondly, and mounting his horse, departed to his palace. And no sooner had he seated himself upon his throne than he summoned the Grand Vizier, and commanded him, saying, Do thou send this instant, and bind in heaviest bonds those vile women, the sisters of my queen, for their ill deeds have at last come to light, and they deserve to die the death of murderers. Let this order forthright make sharp his sword, for the ground thirsteth for their blood. Go, see thyself that they are beheaded without stay or delay. Await not other order, but instantly obey my commandment. The Grand Vizier went forth at once, and in his presence the envious sisters were decapitated, and thus underwent fit punishment for their malice and their evil doing. After this, Khusrau Shah with his retinue walked afoot to the cathedral mosque, whereby the queen had been imprisoned for so many years, in bitter grief, and tenderly embraced her. Then, seeing her sad plight, and her careworn countenance and wretched attire, he wept, and cried, Allah Almighty forgive this mine unjust and wrongful dealing towards thee. I have put to death thy sisters, who deceitfully and despitefully raised my wrath and anger against thee, the innocent, the guiltless, and they have received due retribution for their misdeeds." And as the morn began to dawn, Shahrazad held her peace till the end of the 688th night. Then said she, "I have heard, O auspicious king, that the king spake kindly and fondly to his consort, and told her all that had betided him, and what the speaking bird had made known to him, ending with these words: Come now with me to the palace, where thou shalt see thy 2 sons and daughter grown up to become the loveliest of things. Hie with me, and embrace them, and take them to thy bosom, for they are our children, the light of our eyes. But first do thou repair to the hammam, and don thy royal robes and jewels." Meanwhile tidings of these events were noised about the city, how the king had at length shown due favour to the queen, and had released her from bondage with his own hands, and prayed forgiveness for the wrongs he had done to her, and how the princes and the princess had been proved to be her true-born children, and also how Khusrau Shah had punished her sisters who conspired against her. So joy and gladness prevailed both in city and kingdom, and all the folk blessed the Shah's Banu, and cursed the Satanesses, her sisters. And next day, when the queen had bathed in the hammam, and had donned royal dress and regal jewels, she went to meet her children, together with the king, who led up to her the princes Bahman and Parvez, and the princess Parizada, and said, "See, here are thy children, fruit of thy womb and core of thy heart, thine own very sons and thy daughter. Embrace them with all a mother's love, and extend thy favour and affection to them, even as I have done. When thou didst give them birth, thine ill-omened sisters bore them away from thee, and cast them into yonder stream, and said that thou hadst been delivered first of a puppy, then of a kitten, and lastly of a musk-ratling. I cannot console myself for having credited their calumnies, and the only recompense I can make is to place in thine embrace these 3 thou broughtest forth, and whom Allah Almighty hath restored to us, and hath made right worthy to be called our children." Then the princes and princess fell upon their mother's neck, and fondly embraced her, weeping tear-floods of joy. After this the Shah and the Banu sat down to meat, together with their children. And when they had made an end of eating, King Khusrau Shah repaired to the garden with his consort, that he might show her the singing tree and the fountain of golden water, whereat the queen was filled with wonder and delight. Next they turned to the belvedere, and visited the speaking bird, of whom, as they sat at meat, the king had spoken to her in highest praise. And the queen rejoiced in his sweet voice and melodious singing. And when they had seen all these things, the king mounted horse, Prince Bahman riding on his right hand, and on his left Prince Parvez, while the queen took Princess Parizada with her inside her litter, and thus they set forth for the palace. As the royal cavalcade passed the city walls and entered the capital with royal pomp and circumstance, the subjects who had heard the glad tidings thronged in multitudes to see their progress, and volleyed shouts of acclamation. And as the lieges had grieved aforetime to see the queen consort imprisoned, so now they rejoiced with exceeding joy to find her free once more. But chiefly they marvelled to look upon the speaking bird, for the princess carried the cage with her, and, as they rode along, thousands of sweet-toned songsters came swarming round them from every quarter, and flew as an escort to the cage, filling the air with marvellous music, while flocks of others, perching upon the trees and the housetops, carolled and warbled as it were to greet their lord's cage, accompanying the royal cavalcade. And when the palace was reached, the Shah and his queen and his children sat down to a sumptuous banquet, and the city was illuminated, and everywhere dancings and merrymakings testified for the joy of the lieges. And for many days these revels and rejoicings prevailed throughout the capital and the kingdom, where every man was blithe and happy, and had feastings and festivities in his house. After these festivals, King Khusrau Shah made his elder son Bahman heir to his throne and kingdom, and committed to his hands the affairs of state in their entirety, and the prince administered affairs with such wisdom and success that the greatness and glory of the realm were increased twofold. The Shah also entrusted to his youngest son Parvez the charge of his army, both of horsemen and foot soldiers, and Princess Parizade was given by her sire in marriage to a puissant king who reigned over a mighty country. And lastly, the Queen Mother forgot, in perfect joy and happiness, the pangs of her captivity. Destiny ever afterwards endowed them one and all with days the most delectable, and they led the liefest of lives, until, at last, there came to them the destroyer of delights, and the sunderer of societies, and the depopulator of palaces, and the garnerer of graveyards, and the reaper for resurrection day, and they became as though they had never been. So laud be to the Lord who dieth not, and who knoweth no shadow of change. End of Volume 9. End of The Two Sisters Who Envied Their Cadette.